Fantastic. So here we are again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and a very warm welcome to all of you, wherever you happen to be, whoever you are. Whether you are a paying student at the Practical CSM Academy, or whether perhaps you've got more of a informal relationship with us and you're just catching up with some of our content. If that's the case, as you'll see in the chat window, please do sign up for our newsletters, and also do check out our other events as well. Many of them are free of charge, even for non-students. So yeah, check it all out. Anyway, if you haven't met me before, my name is Rick Adams. I'm the CEO, but I'm also the subject matter expert here at Practical CSM, and I do the majority of the training. And today's one of a series. The series is on the Practical CSM Framework, and I'm going to share my screen. Share screen 2, like so, and okay, there we go. And I'm just going to bring the chat window back up just to make sure I can see that. So forgive me whilst I'm fiddling about here. There we go. Lovely. So there we have it. Phase 6 of the Practical CSM Framework today, value realization phase, a really interesting phase, I think, and perhaps even the most important of the phases that we go through, of the 7 in the Practical CSM Framework. So one more to go, but this is phase 6, value realization. As we go through, feel free to ask your questions in the chat window. Can you please direct all questions to everyone so that everyone sees both your question and also then here's my answer. Okay, so don't do it just to me, do it to everybody so everyone can see your question. And also, if you've got any other comments and observations, yeah, pile them in. The more the merrier. I think it makes it much more interesting if there's feedback and interaction going on. So feel free to do that. Now, that said, we've actually got quite a lot of content to get through, so I'm going to start that process off. So I always start with a short overview of the frameworks, because not everybody attends all of these, and sometimes people just drop in for one of these. I'm going to be really just 2 minutes on it. So if you've heard it before, grab a coffee if you want to, but I will only be 2 or 3 minutes, 4 minutes, absolute max, and then we'll get into phase 6, value realization itself, what happens, the activities and outputs. We'll talk about customer value, we'll talk about customer health, and we'll talk about business reviews and how we present to business decision makers. So that's what we've got in store for today. So without further ado, customer success frameworks, as I said, this is going to be very brief because I do overview it all the time. The concept of a framework is neatly described here, I think, in what Sir Isaac Newton is saying when he says, if I've seen further than others, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants. And I think what I get from that, what he means, is that he could not have done what he had done if he had had to work from first principles. But he didn't have to go back and work out the fundamentals. They'd already been done. And so he could stand on that to reach further. He didn't have to build that himself and spend half his career doing that, leaving only the other half to get half as far as he actually did. So same principle in anybody's job. Why start from scratch if half of it's done for you already in terms of working out what to do and how to do it? And that is the case, of course, in any profession these days. So there's a best way of doing sales, of doing accounting, of doing engineering, of doing like ITIL for customer service, for example. And project management has its own systems and processes, and Practical CSM has come up with the Practical CSM Framework, which is a framework for customer success management, and it's exactly the same concept. Pre-created set of responses to the common challenges that we're going to face. It's documented with step-by-step guidance, and then it's published, and people can be familiarized with it and aware of what they need to do if this situation arises ahead of time. So when it does arrive, you're all prepared and ready, and you can get on and solve the problem. So compared to without a framework in place, well, now you've got to work out what the challenge is and then find the right way of solving it, and then decide which one that is, and maybe test them and work out what to do, gather the necessary assets, create the assets, practice to get good at it, and then do it, and then measure it and maybe find it wasn't very good after all because you didn't know whether it was any good or not. You had to try it to see. compared to method B, where again, obviously you've got to start by knowing what the challenge is, but then you refer to the framework. If that's the challenge, what do I do? Okay, here's the best practice. You've already got the pre-created assets. You've already been trained in how to do it. Just get on and do it, and then measure it. And you should find the results are great because it's best practice that you're applying. It's already been tried and tested elsewhere. Okay, so a generic framework, of course, won't necessarily get you to the nth degree exactly where you need to be in your organization. So the 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle says, well, look, it'll get you the majority of the way. The spade work will be done, but you're still going to need to customize it a little bit to suit your portfolio of products and services, your customers, the way you do customer success management, and so on. But there's so much value in doing it this way. It gives you consistency. It gives you quality. It gives you enhanced productivity. It allows you to collaborate between and within your team. It gives you pre-created assets and resources. You can pre-approve what people do and manage them more easily. You know how to measure it. You can put training in place for it and add new team members to make you more versatile and to grow your team. When you change the best practice, of course, you're making one change, which you can then disseminate through to everybody. And it does provide a visible, documented, this is how we do it, which is what a lot of the external standards are looking for, like, for example, ISO. So lots and lots of benefits, and there's a tumbleweed because I cannot think of any reason why you wouldn't want to employ a framework in your customer success management. So if for more information on that, go to my book, The Practical CSM Framework, which contains 7 phases, and we're doing phase 6 today. And here's the book, Practical Customer Success Management. And of course, the training that we deliver is based on these 7 phases as well. So the Certified CSM Professional Program is based on these 7 phases of the Practical CSM Framework. So 3 stages: initialization, user readiness, and ongoing. And then within the initial stage, we've got phases 1 and 2, preparation and commitment. Phases 3, 4, and 5 all come into the user readiness. And then we're doing phase 6 today, which is value realization. And together with engagement evaluation, that goes into the ongoing stage, which is that 3rd stage there. So that's how it all fits together. And that's really all I wanted to say about frameworks, both generically and the Practical CSM Framework. Feel free to learn more, of course, from the book, or come on to one of our courses. But we're going to focus now on phase 6, value realization. So thank you for bearing with me on that. As I said, feel free to ask questions in the chat window. Just make sure you're typing to everyone, not just to me. So what happens in the value realization phase is our first topic. Well, I think this is a really interesting phase because it is, in fact, the first phase and the only phase where customers actually start getting any value back. And that's not just in terms of, well, there's been 5 phases of the post-sales journey in front of this where they've not got any value back yet until they reach phase 6, but also the entire pre-sales journey where they didn't get any value either. So if you imagine, it starts way back where they have a challenge becomes known. We need to resolve this new problem, a new piece of legislation, or we're spending far too much money on energy and we need to deal with it, or we need to increase our quality of service to our clients, or we've got a security issue that we need to deal with. Whatever the challenge is, they become aware of it, and then they become aware perhaps also that they do need to deal with it, and they decide that they're going to have an initiative to resolve the issue. So they decide on that, and then they also find out that they can't do it as things stand because they haven't got all of the right equipment to deal with it. They need some tools, and they could build them themselves, but it would be easier to go out and actually get them from elsewhere. And those tools, if you're in the warehouse, that might be a forklift truck. And if you're a delivery driver, that might be a van or a truck. But of course, in the world of technology, a lot of the tools that we use these days are technology, and a lot of SaaS companies provide a lot of fantastic tools for their clients to resolve their problems. So they've decided they need a tool like what your company sells. So they've gone and done their research, and maybe they've narrowed it down to half a dozen or even 3 or 4 suppliers, and you're in that list. And they decide whether you're the type of business that they could do business with, and whether you've got the right quality generally, and whether you've got the right types of products and services, and so on. And if you have, then maybe they'll narrow you down even more to be, well, let's go to the next stage, and let's really unpack and try out your tool, and let's pilot it, and let's see if it integrates with what we've got and fits with what we need. And then maybe if they decide it's maybe one of the best ones, let's negotiate a deal and see if we can come to a deal, on the financial side. And if that goes well, the contract gets signed. They haven't had any value out of all of that. That's just cost, right? And then maybe you've got to develop it, or there's customization work, or you've got to deliver it, or there's integration, or there's then training of end users, and support needs to be put in place, and new processes need to be created and documented and published, and a whole raft of communication. Maybe they need to hire new people. Maybe they need to hire new people to hire the new people. There's just so much cost involved in doing anything new. So all of this adds up, and they've got no value whatsoever yet. All the way through to the post-sales, where we've gone through the first phases of researching them, agreeing with them, and committing to what we're doing with them, onboarding them, helping them with adopting and training and support. And now they finally understood and mastered our product, they can start to get the value out of it. And this is the value realization phase. Okay, so it's the only phase of the entire life cycle where we create value, and our role here is largely, in a way, is done. We've done the hard work in the onboarding and the adoption. Excuse me, Warren. Dogs, shush. Dogs are having a play fight. Thank you. You be quiet over there. So, where was that? Yes. So we had a lot of our work getting them to the stage where they could create value. But now they are either already mastered or are in the process of mastering the processes and the utilization of our tools, and maybe others as well. They know what they're doing to a large extent. Now it's a question of ongoing measurement and reporting. Are we seeing the progress that was promised? Are our expectations being met? Are the milestones passing where the KPIs are being achieved for those milestones? Are we on track for ultimate outcome realization? That is the purpose of this phase 6, and it's an ongoing phase. The others have been as short as possible because we want to get here as quickly as possible. This one is the opposite. It's as long as possible because we want them to stay here for as long as possible, and they should want to stay here for as long as possible, because the longer they're in the value realization phase, the more value they're getting. We want to start it quickly, and we want to keep it for as long as possible. So that's the job of the value realization phase. Whereas before we were trying to keep them short and get as quickly as possible to phase 6. Now we're in phase 6. We take the foot off the accelerator a little bit, and we're going to be doing regular business reviews. Are we on track? And maybe some get well. If not, well, we're not quite where we ought to be. Here's what I recommend to get us back on track. That sort of thing. Okay, so qualities that we might need for that is some research and analysis qualities, creative problem solving, and the good old determination to succeed. Okay, so let's take a look in more depth at the actual activities and the output. So we're going to review the customer engagement strategy. So what is it they're trying to achieve? If we don't know that, then how can we be measuring progress towards when we don't know what we're moving towards? If we don't know where the target is, we can't possibly hit it, or only by accident. So we need to make sure we've reviewed the engagement strategy. And by the way, is it still up to date? So we need to ask our clients, has anything changed in terms of your strategy, in terms of what you need? Have your challenges stayed the same, or have they changed, in which case your initiative might have changed to meet these new requirements of this new or slightly differing challenge? Because change happens, right? It's the one constant. So assuming that we know all of that and we know what we're doing, We then need to work out, okay, well, how are we going to measure progress towards these requirements that you have? And this is where the KPIs and the milestones come in. So KPIs, key performance indicators, so they are not necessarily the ultimate measurements. So for example, maybe the ultimate thing they want is energy reduction. And our tool has gone in to help them monitor and measure the usage of energy throughout their portfolio of buildings that they own. And that's what we're doing. We're sort of an energy monitoring and management tool. Okay, well, fine. So we may not see initially a great deal of energy reduction until we start sort of turning on various different features of how they can do the energy reduction, and that might take time. So it might well be that there's a phase where we're learning how they use energy, and then a phase where we're sort of applying different techniques to reduce that energy, and that's going to mount up over a period of time before they really see any direct results. Or maybe it's sales, and we're delivering new sales methodologies through online sales AI systems or something. Well, it might take a while because their average sales cycle might be 2 years or 6 months or whatever. So in that period of time, there'll be no difference whatsoever in the amount of revenue. So they can't say, well, it's working or not from amount of revenues coming in, which is the ultimate, obviously, for measurement for sales. So is there some other leading indicator? Is there another KPI that might help us to indicate that, well, there's lots more of this happening, which indicates the likelihood later on of that happening? So we're looking early to see what can we measure early on that indicates progress towards what we want, even though it's not actually what we want itself yet, which might take more time. So I say a classic example being you're upskilling people. Now they've got more skills, but they still got to apply those, and that's going to take some time. But you can prove that they know more and that they are maybe seeing more clients, for example. So you are now seeing more clients on a more regular basis. Therefore, you should find that your quality of service is going to go up and your relationships with your customers are going to improve. And that's going to come in the measurements when you ask your clients. But when you ask your clients right now, they probably haven't noticed yet that they're getting they're getting more meetings and better quality meetings. But they are. We can measure that now. How many meetings and what the quality, what was discussed. And then later on, the customers will start to actually recognize this, and we will then see the things like net promoter score change. I hope this is making sense. So we've got to think about the KPIs and milestones, and that is actually a really big task within this phase 6, is have we got the right KPIs and milestones identified, and do we know how we're going to measure things and how often we're going to measure them, and then how we're going to sort of show that back to the client, or how they're going to show us, or how it's going to work in terms of reporting on a regular basis on these milestones. If you get that cracked, you've got this phase sorted out. It's really that as simple as that, to my mind. Okay, that is the bit that we need to get right, and very often it's actually quite difficult, because what we ideally want to do, as we'll see later, is we want to focus really on business challenges within the client, and the easiest thing for us is to work on the technical stuff. All right, but we've got to somehow show the link between the technical stuff and what happens on our tool or with our tool, and their ultimate outcome requirements, which may have very little to do with our tool at face value, but our tool is supporting that initiative. And we'll come back to that point. And of course, whilst we're doing this, we want to make sure the customer understands the value that we're delivering through the tool. It's not just them doing it, it's the fact that they're using our tool to do it that we want them to understand. So we know that they are more likely to renew in that instance, and they're reporting it obviously as well to the powers that be, the decision makers, to make sure that they do understand and make good quality renewal decisions. We're also perhaps looking for upsell and cross-sell opportunities as we get closer to and share these sorts of discussions with the client, so we can have opportunities for finding out, well, what else can we do? Did they know that, in discussion, you've told me you've got this other challenge. Did you know we actually have a product that is very relevant to that would work really well, I think, in your situation? Would you like to explore that with us at another meeting? Now, this isn't, when we're doing our business review, we're not going to go down that route now, but we could maybe check the checkbox to say, let's organize a separate meeting to explore that. That would be very, very powerful. So we're reporting on this with the client. We're obtaining feedback and advocacy as well. So what did you like? What didn't you like? How can we improve our product? And also, if you did like our product, would you act as a testimonial? Would you act as a case study? Would you maybe come and give a talk at an event that we're doing? Would you allow me to introduce you to someone else who's got a similar problem as you, who'd like to sort of learn from you as to how you dealt with it? So there's lots of opportunities for our customers to help us and to help other clients that we might be able to work with as well in this value realization phase. And we're, of course, making sure that what needs to happen has happened and has happened to the right quality and consistency. And we're updating our tools to say that that is what's happening. So, all right. So what might we include in terms of outcomes? Well, what might our customer be looking for? What might we be looking for? Well, if we look at things from our perspective, or let's say our manager's perspective, our manager might say to us, look, what we want to do is, if they're running a pilot, we want to prove the value to them. If we've already landed them as an existing client, then we really want to make sure they really do adopt, in other words, renew and expand, i.e. renew at higher levels. And then if we've done the land, adopt, and expand motions with them, then what we want to do maybe is then develop the existing relationships to go wider and deeper within their organization, gaining more trust and more rapport, establishing relationships maybe with more senior people, and going out into more departments so that we get more sales opportunities. Gaining the upsell and the cross-sell opportunities from these activities, gaining the advocacy from these, and gaining the feedback, as we discussed a minute ago. So there's lots of things that we need to achieve. Now, if you think about that list, there's nothing really there that would make the client particularly bothered. So if we're going to waste their time, as it were, or invite them to like a QBR, quarterly business review meeting, well, we need to be thinking about the WIIFM, what's in it for me, for them. And this is not that. So this is a great list for us and some of the things where we would benefit from working closely with them on an ongoing basis, post-sales, post them understanding and mastering our product, to measure and prove value and so on and so forth. But what about them? Okay, well, from their perspective, what they might be interested in is, well, maybe they want to understand our product better. And what else can it do for them? And how can they get more value out of it? Maybe they want early evidence of ROI because they're nervous and they feel there's a risk at the moment involved in putting more and more into this initiative, and they want to see that risk mitigated by seeing some value being returned as quickly as possible, or at least some evidence that value will get returned. Remember, we talked about leading indicators. Maybe they need to get a handle on what the real cost of ownership is of this. How is this really going to work? How long does it really take us to use these new processes, to do these new tasks, to create these new outputs that deliver ultimate outcomes? And that may take some time for them to sort of embed all of that into the company and work that out. And alongside that, the associated risks and how they can mitigate those risks. A better quality roadmap where they understand in more detail, or just more accurately, when and where and how they're going to get results, so that they can be more realistic in their forward planning for cash flow and for growth and revenues and so on and so forth. So when they're reporting back to their senior levels above them, they're reporting facts that they can be pretty confident in. Of course, if they're the project manager or the project lead or the head of this initiative, then of course they're responsible for making it work. So is it working? Will it work? Has it worked so far? Is it continuing to work? So, can we sign off that this has now been implemented? Can we sign off ultimately, that it's working? Change management is very important. Have we communicated with, trained, and are we supporting, and are we also incentivizing the actual users of this? Do they know what they're doing? Are they confident? Are they comfortable with doing it? Are they willing to do it? And so on. So change management is important to them. And all of this giving them overall a greater sense of confidence in their initiative and our product. And we want to give them that. We want to give them that. I'm your guide, your helper, and I'm here to say, yeah, look, this is working fine. I know this is new territory for you, but actually we've trodden this ground before with other clients, and where we are right now looks okay to me. I think we're okay. So I want to, give you that confidence through my experience. This is what clients want from us. So measuring customer value is actually really, really tough, I think. It's one of the toughest cookies to crack. It's easy to measure our value. We can do net promoter score, and we can do, retention rates, and we can do customer lifetime value. And there's all sorts of things that we can do. That's for us. Customers obviously don't care about those things. All right. From their point of view, the value is none of that stuff, right? That's our value. What they're interested in is their value, and that's totally different. So what's their value? Well, it depends on what they're doing, doesn't it? As I said, it could be energy reduction, it could be security, it could be quality of service to their customers, it could be being able to launch new versions of their product to the market more quickly to beat their competitors. It could be all sorts of things, couldn't it? Manufacturing quality. Yeah, there's all sorts of things they could be trying to achieve. Well, you know what your clients are trying to achieve, or if you don't, you should do. I'm sure you do. So it's going to be different every single time. So I can't say, well, it's this. You need to work out, well, because we have this portfolio, these are the likely values that our clients are likely to want to realize through using these tools that we've got. So then let me sum check with our client. On this occasion, client X, what are you trying to achieve? What outcomes do you need to see? And I would say that generally speaking, you need to think about then how you're going to measure that, and what the key performance indicators are. As we've said, a critical indicator of progress towards a result. Just some terminology there. I'm not going to go through it. And just to mention this concept of a leading indicator. And if you weren't sure when I was discussing it before, we're going to do an example here from Microsoft. So this is something that Microsoft use. This is Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, is quoted as saying, revenue is a lagging indicator, usage is a leading indicator. And why does that make sense for Microsoft? Well, here's the performance curve of a typical software application. And by performance, we're talking about the performance for the vendor. In other words, how much revenue can they get from a particular software application, right? Not how well does the software application perform for the user, how well does it perform for the vendor? All right, so we're talking about revenues back. Well, in the early stage, actually, you get pretty much no revenues back from it. Whilst it's being tried and tested, you launch it into the market, you only get even before the early adopters, you get the innovators who are helping you in beta testing and in trying it and giving their feedback. And typically, even if it's 2.5%, they're probably even getting it for free anyway from you, because they've got some kind of agreement with you with everything you now release, they get anyway. So it doesn't actually cost them any more than not having it. But that's not what you're interested in. What you're interested in with those early people, and even going into the earlier of the early adopters maybe, in those early stages, you're not interested in getting revenues from them anyway, because you know that for every one of those, there are tens and tens of thousands or even millions of early majority and late majority. And this hump here is nowhere near as big as the reality, by the way, which would be off the page in terms of numbers. So the early and late majority are much larger than the innovators. And those innovators then, what we want from them is not revenues. We just want to see, are they using this product or aren't they? Without being pushed and forced into using it, once we've delivered it to them and they've installed it, do they use it once and go, and then never use it again? Or do they, once they've installed it, can they not stop using it? Is it launched every day? Are they on it all the time? Are they talking about it on social media? Are they downloading new additions to it and upgrades to it? Are they trying out all the functions? Are they loving it? And what's that going to tell us? That's going to tell us that this product, when it does hit the market properly, and when it's being sold to the majority of people out there, they're going to buy it. It's going to have a fantastic reputation, and people have found, generally people do seem to find a use for it. Therefore, people will buy it. So that makes sense. So therefore, again, the concept was revenue is a lagging indicator. We'll only know that after it's too late, right? Usage is a leading indicator. So if at the early stages usage isn't good enough, right, that tells us not to launch it, delay the launch, fix the software. If we waited till revenues came in, it would be too late to do that. You can't delay the launch. You're already launched. You're already measuring it, and the general feeling about your product is too late. Does that make sense? Hope it does. Okay, good. So using KPIs to predict future performance levels is all about obviously extending the line forward. So here's an example of Jennifer here doing the 400-meter hurdles. She's performed over the last 4 events, as you see here. So if we then took those 4 that you see in the red and drew a green dotted line, we could extend that line further, and and through the average of those 4 dots, until we hit the target of 60 seconds, which is her target, and then draw a line down and find that assuming she stays on trend, she will hit her target halfway through May, all things being equal. Does that make sense? All right. Now, that is a very, very simple way of doing a trend line, but you do need to consider all sorts of factors. I mean, one factor in this instance, of course, is that Jennifer is not a machine. She's a human being. And it may well be that as she moves forwards and gets better and better, she will not be able to continue to improve at the same percentage rate. Yeah, because she's pushing her body harder and harder as she moves forward. So that assumption that Jennifer will continue to make a linear improvement in her times, is that a realistic assumption? Now, that's an example here with Jennifer. You've got to decide what the examples are with you, but perhaps you've then got to deal with that. So, for example, we might say, right, what we're actually going to do is we're going to make the assumption that she only does 50% as well each time. There's only a 50% improvement. So she drops very quickly down to very small amounts of improvement from this point forwards. And we've now used a new trend line. And instead of being halfway through May, we now have a more realistic trend line where we actually say, look, she's going to get a linear progress through till April, but then she's probably going to get more of a logarithmic type arrangement through until July, and it's not until July, therefore, that she's going to hit her target of 60 seconds. It's going to take her longer because the improvements are going to progressively get less and less. And that may be a more realistic trend line based upon your experience with previous clients. And that's what you want to give as milestones, because if you'd given the milestone of you'll hit 60 middle of May and they don't, how's that going to feel? Is there the potential for them to say, well, then we're not going to renew in June because we didn't hit the target you said we were going to hit, and we're nowhere near it, in fact. All right, we've lost confidence. We want our clients to be confident in us. So we need to provide a prediction that is realistic. And this is an example of that. Is this making sense? No one's commenting, by the way. Questions, comments, observations? So it's much easier for business decision makers to understand the chart on the right than the data on the left. Okay, so wherever we can, we want to try and make things visual in our reporting so that they can see, you know, we're very visual animals, you know, we can see how those 4 dots, that green line is an accurate portrayal extended on, and we can get the concept of how the red line will actually be a more accurate portrayal of somebody who is moving closer to their ultimate performance level. Neil, I'm afraid we don't send out the slides for these free webinar presentations. My apologies. We keep those just for the paid for events. If you come on a paid for event, you do get these slides on those occasions. Thank you for your question. Sorry, it was not the answer you were looking for. So anyway, there we go. So predictive analysis is what we're talking about here. And this is a fantastic thing that we need to be doing in phase 6. And this is some of the value we're returning to our clients. We're saying, okay, here's where we are up till now. Here's our prediction for how we're moving forwards. So when we meet in May, we should be here. When we meet in June, we should be here. And ultimately in July, we're going to be hitting this really important milestone for you. All things being equal, all things going well. So you need to think about the KPIs for yourself, for your customers, to measure in this sort of way, and then to show them, preferably in a visual format for them as well, if you possibly can. So it might be around quality of service, might be around customer experience, it might be around numbers of meetings had, it might be around numbers of customer success plans, it might be around cost reductions, productivity increases, revenue increases. You know, you've got to decide what those things are. Okay. And then once you've decided what you're trying to achieve, then how are you going to measure them in something that makes sense? And then what you need to do, of course, is validate and ratify this with the client, with the stakeholders. If they don't believe that this is true, so if they don't believe that those statistics were right for January, February, March, and April, we're not off to a good start. So if they know, no, those are accurate, correct, published figures, that is what we did in those months, then that at least is a good start where they believe that. And do they believe in the green line moving forwards? No, but can they believe in the red line moving forwards? Yeah, that might be a reasonable prediction that they're comfortable with. So you've got to check, are you comfortable with this? Because this is what we're going to be using, to create our milestones. And effectively, when I say that, it's the other way around, really. We want them to create this, ideally. And we're there helping them to create this. And they are owning it as being theirs. And they are then presenting this back, internally to their decision makers, showing them, here's where we are, here's the line moving forward, so here's what we're predicting. Okay, now from our point of view then, we do want to also do measurements for our own value, and that is around customer health. And customer health simply means the health of the relationship between us, the supplier of the tool, and our client who is using the tool. And our concern is if there's a good relationship or good health between us, then what that means is that they are likely to renew. And if there's a poor health relationship between ourselves and our client, then there is a less likeliness of them renewing. So we could do some kind of system where we use a number of different KPIs combined to give us an overall score or value called a health score that in combination tells us the likelihood of the relationship being healthy or unhealthy or somewhere in the middle. And we could then maybe just do some sort of red, amber, green traffic light system to help us make sense of it. And of course, that is what most, if not all, the customer success software tools will deliver for us. And it's great. Makes it really simple. At a glance, red, amber, green, which customers are at risk, which customers are okay but could be better, which customers are doing great. From that, We can then maybe make a decision as an individual CSM with a portfolio of 30 clients that I'm looking after, or 330 clients, or 33 clients, or whatever you've got, because obviously it depends on products and so on, and how sophisticated and big your clients are. But whatever your portfolio is, which ones do you need to spend the time on? And when do you need to spend the time on them? And that's the point of the health score. It is also very useful, though, because from a corporate point of view, for the whole CSM team as a whole, we can ask the same question: which clients do we need to invest more effort in as well? And also from a CS team perspective, we can also use it to measure customer success activity. So let's try these things for this next quarter, and let's see, are we increasing the health overall, or is it going up, or is it down? What's the trend overall, not just of any one individual client, but overall, are we now in customer success actually making an impact? And if we are, then of course that measurement, our CS leader will want to be all over that and going to the board and the C level to prove the value of customer success from the fact that the health scores were like this, but over the months of customer success activity, they are now like that, and they're much better than they were. And here's the trend lines to prove it, and the visual aid, as we've just been discussing. Now, there's lots of different indicators that might go into a health score, and the more we combine in there, the more accurate it's going to be. It's a bit like if you were somewhere out in the wilderness and you had a map and it showed you a few sort of key things, and you were looking at the map and say, okay, well, that mountain is over there, I can see the river over there, that church is there, and that farmhouse is over there. So there's 4 things, and I'm here in the middle of those 4 things. I reckon I'm here. Then that's hopefully a fairly accurate representation of where you are on the map, and you know where you are. If you could only see 2 of those things, it might be harder to work out where you are on the map. And if you could see like twice as many things, it might be twice as easy or twice as accurate to position yourself on the map. So the more things that you are using inside your health score, the more accurate that health score is likely to be of the true health of the relationship between yourself and your client. Of course, there's a downside, though, is that if you're collecting all this stuff, then you've got more effort expended in collecting it, which comes at a cost potentially. And also, you are asking your CSM potentially for some of these things that are manually updated to spend more time manually updating systems and less time with the client. So you might have a fantastic health scores, but less time to do anything about it. So we don't want to spend so much time working out perfect health scores that we've got no time left to do the customer success management work. That's not the right way either. So there's a balance here to be found. You've got to decide how that balance works in your organization, or somebody in your organization has to make that decision. And you can see some of the KPIs, the level of sponsorship. What advocacy have we got? Are we at the C level, or is this an unimportant trial that they're doing with no particular cachet within the organization? How much advocacy are they giving? When they do a net promoter score, are they saying, yeah, we'll recommend you? Are they actually recommending us on social media or whatever? Sentiment, level of CSATs, when we do those sorts of evaluations, utilization of support, the pattern of utilization of support, and how quickly we're able to resolve logged support queries, etc. Product utilization, is it going up? Is it going down? Is it staying steady? Is it steadily low? Is it steadily high? Are they using just some of the features but not all of them? There's all sorts of things that we could look at in product usage. Implementation, if we're still at the implementation stages, and there may be multiple phases and we're implementing at different stages in different parts of their organization, keep a track of all of that. Are we meeting the milestones on time, to target, in terms of cost and so on, and quality, etc.? Are they happy with the implementation? Is it going well? And other sort of more specifics like the Net Promoter Score, of course, itself. So as we've said, how many is the right number? Well, it's somewhere between, we don't want not enough to know where we are, And we don't want so many that we're bogged down doing too much measurement. So you've got to decide where that is for you. I would say, somewhere around 5 to 7 feels good for me, for most organizations. If you're a particularly sophisticated, powerful organization with lots of money behind you and you've got the means to do this through technical measurements, then by all means go to 9 or 10 or whatever, of course. But maybe 5 to 7 is a good starting point anyway, at least. Okay, so I don't have time for my story about the 3 blind men feeling the elephants, unfortunately. So I'm going to not do that story. I just don't have the time. But another time, we'll come back to it. And I would also recommend to include both the objective and subjective KPIs. What I mean by that is that subjective means someone's opinion. Objective means it's recorded data that you can't really argue with. So, for example, objective might be numbers of logins. That's not subjective. Like if they've logged in 50 times this week, they've logged in 50 times this week. It's not a conversation piece where we can say, well, I think they've logged in more or less. The fact is the fact. Subjective might be around what percentage of their of the features that we have that are relevant to the client are they not yet understanding and using. Well, that is actually more subjective because we've got to decide which features we think are the ones that they might find value from before we can then perform the math. Okay, and something that's very subjective might be, what do we think is their opinion of us? Do they like us? Okay, that is very subjective. Okay, so we've got this objective through to subjective. We want some of each if we can. Okay. Also, qualitative versus quantitative. So qualitative is, again, more detail, but less easy to compare. So it's more of a feeling or an emotion. Quantitative is more of a value or a piece of data, like a percentage or a number, that's really easy to compare. So you can compare over time, or you can compare with other organizations, for example. But it doesn't tell you much. It just tells you one's 5 and one's 17. Well, if one's 5 and one's 17, then that's a little bit over 3.5 times that one. Okay, that's all you can sort of say. It doesn't tell you much more than that. Okay, you need then but why is that one 3.5 times that one? Well, that's where you go from quantitative to qualitative, and that's more interesting. So qualitative is more interesting, tells you more, but is less easy to compare and analyze. Here is an example of a health score, perhaps on a laptop screen. You can see here on the left, you've got the customer and the renewal date. And then the first of the columns with data in is the overall health score. And you can see red, amber, green, but you can actually see there aren't any greens. They're either red, i.e. it's unhealthy, or it's amber, which is it's okay, but could be better. And then we've got the individual 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in this instance, individual KPIs that together combine to form the overall health score, ranging in red, amber, and greens. And the arrows indicate the trend. So is this getting better, up arrow, getting worse, down arrow, or staying the same as the last period? And you can choose what the periodicity is for that. So it could be daily, weekly, monthly, whatever you decide. And those are the arrow indicators. So we can see here, perhaps initially, the lower the score, the worse the health. So we've got what? We've got a couple of 35s there, alphabet and eccentric. Maybe they're the ones that we need to think about working on the most, as an example. Okay, here's another example of a tool. This one is more like a dashboard view. So it's not giving us the detail, it's just giving us the overall. But of course, we could click into it and look at the breakdown of what it means in more detail. But we can see here, the health score and whether it's up and down, and other information as well that might be interesting for us. Like, well, what's the value of these initiatives? That could be quite an interesting. What stage are we at with them? That might be very interesting as well in terms of making our decisions about what we need to do. All of these tools, the point of them is they help us to know What should we do now? What should we do next? What should we prioritize? What should we deprioritize for now, come back to later? What should we not bother doing at all? Okay, so that's the purpose of these tools if you've not seen them before. Final topic then is business reviews, and of course we could do an hour just on business reviews, and in fact I'm thinking of doing that as a skills course on QBRs, quarterly business reviews. So if that's of interest, let me know in the evaluation, which will be coming up soon, your chance to evaluate if you'd be interested in a QBRs 1 hour skills course available online for free soon, if it's something that people want. So for business reviews, it's not a question of one size fits all. We need to work with the customer's key stakeholders on what information to share, who should attend, how often we should do them, how much time they should take, what the format should be, and how it should be managed. But what we must do is we must bring value to the client and, of course, to us. So is it relevant to your audience? What value are we bringing? Is it in the language of your audience? So if they're business decision makers, is it in business language? If they're more technical people, is it technical language? Keep it simple. Stick to the agenda that is agreed. Try to make it as pictorial and graphical as you can for the reasons we've already stated. Make sure that you don't waste people's time by having allowing too long for the meeting, but also that you don't have to squeeze things so you can't make good quality decisions. So you've got to have enough time, but no more. Treat it as an opportunity to get to know the client and meet stakeholders and understand both the form relationships with the stakeholders, but also understand what that client's needs are, and of course to enhance your trust relationships. Begin with the end in mind is my what I pretty much say for any consultancy and any meeting with the client. What does that mean? Well, of course, what it means is we should always know why we're having the meeting. Make sure you've got a what's in it for me for everybody who's going to be attending. Make sure it's really clear to you and to them what you're delivering and why you're delivering it. So we need outcomes, but outcomes for who? Well, for every business review, whether it's a QBR or an ABR or monthly business review or an ad hoc review, right? Number one, the client as an organization, what will that client organization learn from attending this, that they can take away that they wouldn't have known otherwise, that adds value? And the individual stakeholder from the client organization, what will they learn? What will they take away? What value will they get? Those are the two important ones. Joanna, thank you. Number 3 and number 4, yeah, us as well. What are we going to get out of it as an organization? And even as a CSM, what are we going to learn from it? How are we going to progress our career? But really, it's the outcomes for them we want to focus on. So this is likely to be progress to, we've said some of this already. So progress towards initiative outcomes, actual performance against predicted performance, changes to outcome requirements that have come to light that they can tell us about, that we can then adjust the project and help them to tweak how they use our tools and systems to get the new value that they need. Identifying new issues, challenges, or barriers that have happened. Agree get well plans to overcome those barriers. Determine what additional value they can now get because we've maybe enhanced a particular feature of our tool that they didn't know about, and they can now do this for it, or it's become relevant to them because they've changed what they do. And where necessary, agree what we're going to be doing over the next period to get the value that we've just been describing. So that's really what the discussion should be about, is these things. And of course, and sorry, there's one more I didn't realize, gaining additional insights that might help them to maximize their ROI. So by the way, did you know that if you turn this feature on, you can also get this, that, and the other? No, I didn't know that. Oh yeah, you can. And that will be, I was working with client X. They found that to be really helpful for reasons X, Y, and Z. Okay, this is the type of insight that we can give in these reviews that leaves these stakeholders here, the individual client stakeholder and the client organization walking out of that meeting thinking that was worth attending. Okay, so that's what we want to try and achieve. For us, of course, enhance the relationship, learn about their needs, develop trust relationships, and change the culture of that relationship from being just like another technical supplier to being a true strategic partner. What we don't want to do in the meeting, I know this is the last couple of moments here, but what we don't want to do is discuss or solve technical issues. That's for technical meetings. We don't want to sell. We can arrange a meeting to sell, as we've said, and we don't want to get into the training. We want to keep this as a business review for business decision makers, in other words. And no negotiation of deals. Negotiate next steps within this project by all means, but not anything else. Okay. So just to summarize what we're talking about, what the customer really cares about is their wider strategy. As a company, they're trying to achieve this, this, and this. And then they've got this initiative, which is helping them to achieve one or more of those strategic goals. And then they've purchased our core service or product to help them with that initiative. And then we've come along as the CSM to help them get the value out of that service. They don't care about our service. They don't care about our core services. They don't even care about their initiative. What they care about is achieving their strategy, primarily. So our customer success services support our core services. I don't mean support technical support. I mean support as in prop up. Okay. They help to maximize value creation and minimize risk for the client. Your core services support your customer's initiative. They provide the features and functions that are needed in that initiative to perform the initiative. The initiative supports the customer's wider strategy, at least one of them, and provides one or more outcomes needed to support that strategy. The customer's wider strategy supports their business, helps them to grow, helps them to prosper, helps them to increase their share value, helps them to break into new markets and do whatever else they're trying to achieve. Is this making sense? I know it is making sense because it's really easy, but we forget. Whoops. The technical person in the client's team might have some interest about our core services. The initiative leader cares about the initiative or the initiative manager, and the senior business leaders care about their business strategies. Ideally, we want to be at the top here talking to that person up there. What should we be talking? Remember, we started by saying in the language of those people about the things they're interested in. So if you are currently holding your QBRs with technical managers about your core services, that is why you're not getting anywhere. Okay, so this we don't have time for. I put it in just in case we did, and we don't, and I didn't think we would. So what have we covered? What happens in the value realization phase, the value realization activities and outputs, measuring customer value, measuring customer health, and business reviews. So just to finish on a positive high, we are currently just over the sort of summer period, we're offering a 35% discount off all the online training courses for individuals. So if you are an individual who is self-funding their own training through for career development, practicalcsm.com/shop, and the code to use is webinar35, all capital letters, will get you 35% off any course. We will be back next month, I think, with the final phase of the framework, phase 7. So thank you very much, particularly Neil and Joanna, for your questions. Thank you all for attending. I hope you found that useful. I really enjoyed it. Time, as always, has gone really quickly. And that's it from me. Please evaluate. Please fill out the evaluation. Thank you very much indeed.